they modified them.
It's for Roundup.
Because of
Right.
Roundup.
And it was started for wheat, big field
Yeah.
stuff like that.
But it's
But
the whole thing. It's the whole thing.
Nanoplastic.
It's like, don't even get me started. Last, like, generation. I mean, that's.
I can start again?
Gavel all over again. I won't
All right.
go live. That.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, you are welcomed to this regularly scheduled April 3rd session of the Planning Commission of the City of Annapolis. And the roll, please.
Mr. Waldman,
Present.
Ms. Butler,
Present.
Mr. Sakunutis,
Present.
Mr. Riley,
Present.
Mr. Klein,
Present.
Mr. Bellamy,
Present.
And Mr. Cummings is absent. He's doing God's work for FEMA. So the agenda tonight is fairly light. We have the one thing I will talk about under new business is the fences legislation. But the agenda as it is, do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
And all in favor say.
Aye.
Aye.
Minutes from the last meeting. Everything was in the planning drive. You had the opportunity to read the excellent minutes that were prepared.
Yep.
Motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
All in favor of approving those minutes as is, say aye.
Aye.
All right. I think we can proceed. Let's see. Let's take care of findings first. You have in front of you the findings for the child care legislation that we heard last month.
I made a few just copy edits today, but nothing.
No,
Okay,
you
so-
have to make edits before 4 p.m. on Wednesday. Otherwise,
They were.
they were? Okay.
Oh, no. Oh,
yeah, I printed it yesterday.
anyway, it was just like some double periods and
Oh, just little stuff? Yeah.
copy editing.
Okay. Anybody?
I thought I actually did that yesterday. So I think I did it
I
yesterday.
think you did because I saw your name in the Google
Yeah,
Drive.
yeah, so I think
So
those-
it's done.
Those changes are in your
Yeah.
version. Yeah.
While we're on that subject, I want to thank once again Mr. Klein for having set that up. I think it's been very, very convenient to be able to just get to it, read it at leisure, make comments and so forth. So do I hear a motion to approve the findings on expansion of childcare, which is 0125? I hear a motion?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any comment, discussion, changes? All right, all in favor as the findings are, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I will sign them. So done. Next on the agenda, let's switch things up just for a moment. Under new business, I would like to, I gave you the opportunity to read Mr. Savage's proposed amendments to the fences legislation so that he can get that underway. Have you had the opportunity to read them?
Yes.
Okay. Do they, those of you who were there for that lengthy discussion, do you find them acceptable?
I did. I thought they reflected what our comments were and they were more specific and fit well in the legislation.
Good. Any other comments? So what I propose we do is we communicate that to, I'll do it by way of a letter because it's a little bit out of the ordinary process. I'll communicate that to Mr. Savage by way of a letter. And we've looked at them and we feel very comfortable with them. And we'd like to see the legislation move on. The one piece that's missing is a calculation of the height of a fence at the top of a hill, depending on the grade of the hill and the distance of the viewer to the top of that hill. Obviously, a 6-foot fence at the top of a hill appears larger than a 2-foot fence at the top of a hill. And I've asked Mr. Cummings to, since he proposed it, to help us with a formula and a diagram. But he's been extremely busy. We'll get to that, and it'll be passed along to the council electation. All right, back to the normal course of affairs. We have, once again, our continuing update on proposed zoning and planning changes. And we have the inestimable team of the comprehensive planning desk. Make sure your mics are on. Okay, back to Tyler Avenue.
Good evening. Thanks for allowing us to give you an update on this project. Eric Lashinsky, as always, Chief of Comprehensive Planning, here with Casey Ortiz and Alexis Robinson for the Comprehensive Planning team. So, tonight we're giving you an update on the Tyler Avenue Complete Community Project. This is in essence what we're focusing on right now as part of our comprehensive rezoning. You've heard past presentations already. This is pretty informal, so I think you can chime in along the way and ask questions. I'm going to just start the overview. I'm going to go very quickly. These are slides that we've shared in past presentations to kind of frame this project in the context of the larger zoning work. Then we'll get back into the complete community project. So whenever we talk to people about this project, we talk about it happening now because we adopted the comprehensive plan last summer, and that triggers rezoning work, whether it's in a city or a county. It's just a very common protocol. We have goals from the comprehensive plan that we're trying to implement into our land use regulations, and these are just some of them bulleted here that we can impact with our zoning regulations. Ultimately, we're trying to make a zoning map, a zoning code consistent with the comprehensive plan. That's the big idea with comprehensive rezoning. We have a zoning map today that's very complex, unnecessarily so, 31 different zoning districts. I'm circled here the Tyler Avenue project area we'll talk about shortly. But ultimately, our rezoning work wants to simplify this map and make it more comprehensible, and make it more functional, I'd say, for average resident, elected official, staff, your body here. We've structured the rezoning process into these 4 phases. We're in this phase 1, immediate recommendations going through the summer. You can see the Tyler Avenue complete communities here. The plan development text amendments is something that is going to probably be coming to you as legislation and going through that process. My understanding is that the council is working on some other legislation related to zoning, and they're going to put this together. But the Tyler Avenue complete community is something, because it's a map change, we're proposing a new zoning district, an overlay zone. Requires a lot more study and process, and that's why we're involved with that. But we have a 3-year plan here to improve our zoning map and zoning code, going through these 4 phases, and we look forward to moving on to the next phases. The election in November, again, is driving why we can't do some of this more soon. We just had to kind of bite off something that was more doable. There are policies on when zoning legislation can be introduced, and that's mid-June. That's the deadline. So for each of those phases, we're doing analysis. We're doing a whole range of community input opportunities and formulating recommendations that ultimately would become legislation that ideally is adopted by City Council. So now, just going to get into this project. This is, I think, a pretty exciting initiative that we think, well, it's focused on the Tyler Avenue corridor. We think some of what comes out of this could have applications elsewhere in the city. You've seen this analysis already. I'll just kind of scoot through the boundary that we've come up with for this overlay district that we're calling the Tyler Avenue Complete Community is basically going from Forest Drive to Bay Ridge Avenue. You know, Tyler Avenue makes a sort of dog leg. A lot of people think about this section as part of Hilltop Lane, but that actually starts past here. And so part of the reason for this boundary is that it takes into account a number of very odd shaped, large, deep lots that are underdeveloped, I would say, with small houses, taking up very small portion of the land. There is a pattern of development here that we want to respect. But you could see that the area fits into the city close to Truxton Park, Annapolis Middle School, Tyler Heights Elementary, Eastport Shopping Center's right here, very close to all these things. We have a couple overlay districts in the city already in Eastport that are designed to achieve different types of goals. On Tyler Avenue, we have an opportunity to really create an overlay district that would supersede the base zoning and bake in a set of standards that would lead to community improvements that people want to see. So Eastport has its overlay districts primarily designed to protect historic character. Tyler Avenue could have a whole different set of opportunities with its overlay zone. So when we talk about the Tyler Avenue corridor, I mean, it kind of starts with this image. We've known for quite some time how unsafe this corridor is. It's not designed to really be safe. It has narrow sidewalks, wide lanes, no striping. There's really very few things that slow traffic down. And so it's become a very dangerous corridor. You see a couple of these signs telling people to slow down because of children at play. You also have a lack of real consistent land use standards, I would say, where you have fences coming right up to the sidewalk, which makes for an even narrower place for people to walk. And, people are allowed to do that. But I think you do see a lot of people walking this corridor, a lot of kids going to school. And this is really the first thing that we need to look at. You also have these really super deep lots. This is just one of a few different vacant lots along the corridor. It's not hard to imagine a better use for this lot than what it is today. So there is a higher vacancy on this corridor than city at large. And we want to take advantage of this opportunity, this kind of unique lot configuration, make better use of it. You can see here, pink are the building footprints, the gray are the driveways, brown fence lines, and the white is basically undeveloped land cover. So you can see just how low density it is today, 2.28 units per acre. That's just a quarter of what they're allowed to have in that R2 zone, which is up to 8 units an acre. So R2 is already very low density zoning. Today, this area is just a fraction of that. And that 2.28 units is actually the whole corridor, not just the area in the box. We were showing a blow up of what that looks like. Here's an interesting map of the walk range that places you can get to in a 3, 5, or 10 minute walk, just reinforcing how well located this area is for conveniences and destinations. A lot of people already benefit from that. So in theory, you could live without a car, particularly as some of the commercial businesses get revitalized along Forest Drive. And there's a lot of transportation options today. I mean, you could say what you will about the Annapolis Transit service could be better, but a lot of lines come through here. You also have a pretty significant sidewalk network, and there's a bikeway on Hilltop Lane. It's somewhat dangerous today, but there are other bikeways planned, and I mean, this is really in the thick of the city's transportation network. And then from a tree canopy perspective, on the left, you see the cluster of tree canopy just taken by satellite view, everything in green. But on the right, it's probably more telling where all those dots represent existing street trees. You can see almost none on this Tyler Avenue corridor right here. There's a few right here, but there's almost none for that entire corridor. Pretty wild. Part of that is the narrow sidewalks. The lots haven't been configured to allow for that, the public right-of-way. So that's a huge opportunity. And then population-wise, we've done the analysis. One of the key things is a lot of families, more than 4 people. That's this metric here. 42% of the households are 4 or more people. That's compared to 17% citywide. You have a large renter population, 42%. Vacancy, 16% versus 9% citywide. This chart, my pie chart, represents just how diverse the neighborhood is racially. So we want to be aware of all these factors. We came up with these goals to guide the project. They basically come down to better streetscape, diversity of housing options, more connected community with community spaces and amenities, revitalized commercial spaces within walking distance, and then the expanded tree canopy, particularly along the streetscape. So we've put these out for a comment at our recent public meeting. That's what I'm going to get into next. Just give you an understanding of how we're doing the outreach here. We have a great website that begins with offering a survey. That's probably the easiest way for folks to participate. We've, what do we have, 40 or so responses so far?
Yeah, we've got about 20 virtual surveys submitted to us. When we were at our event 2 days ago, we had about another 15 submitted, and the majority of them were they were from Spanish speakers. So that's honestly been the way we've been able to get a lot of feedback from them as well.
We're going to aggregate everything we hear in the survey and provide some data on that once we have more
Do you
participation.
have any preliminary sense of from those who've responded so far?
We do. We have a couple slides in here, actually.
Okay.
We've gotten out in the neighborhood with these postcards. We spend a day just basically going to every house in the neighborhood with the postcard on the left, and then the one on the right is going to every property owner. Since a lot of these are rentals, the property owners don't necessarily live in the neighborhood. That's going out next week. That's going to basically be a prompt for the property owners, no matter where they live, to be engaged in this process and point them to our website. And we're really actually asking for people to reach out to us directly and have kind of like a one-on-one stakeholder type meeting, and kind of so we can understand what their interests are and what they'd like to see out of this project. These are some of the sound bites that Casey pulled from the survey. Just some of the initial comments we heard. And this was one of the questions on the survey, if you could change one thing. And so, yeah, it's a lot related to the streetscape.
For the most part, a lot of what people look to from our meeting there and from the surveys, a lot of it comes down to just safety in general. They want to be able to send their kids to school and not have to drive them, or trust that if their kid's riding a bike in the street, they're not going to get hit because someone's going 60. When we were doing flyering, actually that day, I got honked at because I was walking on the street and someone was making a turn. This one person's going 60. They honked at the person trying to get onto Tyler Avenue. So it's just, it's very clearly a problem. And we even had people show us pictures of cars that flipped because they hit a car. And we had a debriefing about it, and Alexis mentioned that someone had joked that it's kind of a rite of passage to get your car totaled or sideswipe. So safety really is a big problem here, and it's something we're thinking about often.
I also encourage you to go way beyond the standard sidewalk, city sidewalk width, which is it 4 feet or 5 feet?
Yeah, it's
And go to
5. Yeah,
yeah, so like 6 minimum, I think is a good.
I agree. And if you see like,
Plus a tree line with street trees.
yeah, if you look at West Street, where where new commercial developments come in, you can kind of see the sidewalk that we're requiring of those businesses. It's something like what you're describing, and it's like that's part of this. We're trying to build in those kind of standards into the zoning. Now, we don't have to use zoning to improve the streetscape. I mean, some of that can be done as kind of a capital project by the city. Like what you see on Hilltop Lane, we can do demonstration type things. The Department of Public Works runs those projects to try to get people to slow down and improve the roadway conditions for pedestrians and cyclists. But ultimately, as properties transform, we want to have standards in place that ensure we get a better outcome than what they might do today. I mean, this is just some of the big words that we've heard from the survey so far. I don't want to just dwell on this, but yeah, you can see some of the things on people's minds. And interestingly, this chart shows the people who are participating in the survey who've never participated in a planning study like this before. A lot of people. So it's unusual for us. We often work with communities that are like much more engaged historically, that are really loud and very used to being involved. But this is a neighborhood that I think has been asking for a lot of things and hasn't really been as engaged in a particular project. But now this is one we're trying to do, and I think we're seeing a lot of interest in it. So we did an event on Tuesday night at Tyler Heights Elementary that was really well attended. It was a great turnout. People were really interested in what we're doing. I think people left feeling like they had been heard, and we got a lot of good comments. We worked with Rocio Smith, who's in the mayor's office. She's our Hispanic liaison. She helped to translate the presentation, and there were some families that were primarily Spanish speaking. We have to do more outreach in that way. We're going to actually have a meeting directly with Spanish speaking residents in the neighborhood in the coming weeks. But we're doing our best to sort of make the materials bilingual, and you can see we had this board in English and Spanish that kind of allowed people to get directly to the survey. We had breakout stations at the event. It focused on streetscape, housing, and community spaces. You could see here in the foreground the streetscape section that Alexis led was probably the most popular. And she created activity that allowed people to kind of talk about locations on the corridor where there's some definite need for improvement. You want to say anything specific about that?
Yeah, I can give a little bit of insight for this activity. Of course, as Eric has already mentioned, safety and speed are things that people have concerns about. But having public works staff attend this meeting as well, we were able to get into conversations about what it looks like to maybe give up some of the street parking to allow for bump outs and other traffic calming features on the road that also may provide space for additional landscaping that'll provide space for more lighting, more trees, and other accommodations, maybe a bench or two. to make the street feel more welcoming. So it's like after addressing all of the safety and speed, people really do want to see a more welcoming atmosphere on this corridor as well.
Yeah, I think some of these notes here, are things that people have been saying for a while, and so I think I'm really hoping we can kind of finally address them. This was Casey Station, community spaces. It was kind of focused on the types of opportunities for additional outdoor, kind of community amenities that could be addressed, both in the zoning and even potentially as a capital project. There's a possible trail corridor running through the neighborhood on a former rail line that we're going to be studying soon separately. This gentleman here, him and his wife have an enormous, essentially it's a garden, but they survive on this garden in their property. And, his simple request was, I just don't want a building shading my garden. So, I don't know, anything particular you want to share about that station?
When it came down to what people wanted to see there, most of them wanted to see a shared use path. I don't know if it's in the presentation, but the most highly requested thing along the entire thing was shared use path, and I think it was the community park. And there's when we did the flyering as well, Eric sent me down Adelmar Street to do flyering, and I stumbled across a community park, and I mentioned it to a few people that live there, and it's maybe a block away from where they live, and they had never known about it. So people loved a lot of the things that we were recommending.
Where's Delmar? Is that the big cul-de-sac, that the U-shaped thing? What's Delmar?
Edelmar.
Edelmar.
It's Edelmar.
Edelmar, where's that?
Edelmar, right. It's off of Primrose, Garden Gate Lane.
Show us at some point, will you?
Yeah, it's outside of our project area, but if you're driving down Hilltop Lane, you're approaching Truxton Park. The streets are off to the left there. There's kind of a corner park playground that's, I think, very unique for Annapolis because it's in one of our 1960s era neighborhoods. You don't see very many parks in those neighborhoods.
Was that a plot that the city bought? Or
I don't know the history of it. I'm really
Yeah, it was
curious.
interesting. I rode by there on my way to the meeting, and
Okay.
I had never seen it before.
Yeah.
And do you know if
Wow,
we
that's
have,
great.
is it deeded to us? Do you know if we own it?
I don't know. We can find
Can we
out.
put that on the list of projects?
Is it right on the border of the boundary that you've sketched?
It's a couple blocks away, but it's close. I think it's called Primrose Park. So we had 3 council members there, which was great. The majority of this area is in Ward 6, Alderman Gay's ward. And this project, I just should have acknowledged at the beginning, is something that's really important to him. And he really helped prioritize this project for us. So he was there engaging with folks. And this was at the housing station. You could see Alex behind here. And so this was an activity at the housing station that was a little bit more involved than we had time for, particularly when people just want to have a conversation. But the opportunity here was to get people to actually think about configuring a block in the neighborhood with a variety of housing options and start to think about how to piece it together. Given how much space is there, we want people to start thinking about the sort of give and take of, different housing types offer different benefits and are different costs, different price points. They, accommodate different size families and have different footprint. And we wanted them to also integrate green space and minimize, the amount of pavement that's needed, to service the property. So there's a lot to ask for, but I think this activity, we're probably going to get some extra mileage out of in the future. I think there's a lot we can, and this is essentially what it looked like. There was sort of a worksheet on the left, and you could see the type of housing options that people were given. They were given little sort of monopoly pieces that that applied to each of those housing types. And they were given this key here that showed these different options, all of which are in Annapolis. Some of these housing types are in the neighborhood today. And we just tried to make an assessment of like, what is the kind of ultimate value of this housing type, so that people could understand that there's a benefit. And this is kind of a good segue into talking, and this is kind of the last piece of the presentation. We're getting into these recommendations now that we've started to receive community input. I think what we heard loud and clear from folks at the meeting is really that before we start applying additional density to the neighborhood, we really have to deal with the community infrastructure there. And that's just, the streetscape. We've been saying it this whole presentation, but it's both designing it for safety, so pedestrians don't have to take their lives into their own hands to walk the street or cross it. The public realm where, street trees, places to sit, maybe there's some amenities adjacent to the street, park space or trail connections. And the connectivity, there are some street connection opportunities, and there's the trail that I mentioned that would tie Tyler Avenue to Bay Ridge Avenue. And it's a cut through today. That's a lot of people don't live on the corridor, treat it that way. And that's why the driving is so hazardous. And so I think if it's redesigned, it'll still be a cut through, but I think people will treat it differently and recognize it more as a neighborhood. This is a graphic that was shared at previous presentation here that was kind of an attempt to put to paper some of the things that we're already sort of seeing as opportunities. And I would say everything on here was reinforced at the community meeting by the people who attended. The orange circles are, for the most part, where traffic should be slow. The intersection opportunities where you could have a small traffic circle or stop sign or some other way of slowing the traffic, chicane, which is something that you see on Bay Ridge Avenue today. The trail connections and dotted line and some of the bikeway opportunities that we already have planned, but you could see some of the street connections. So this Marta Drive pretty much ends right here today. There's a gravel road that comes up this way. A lot of people mentioned this opportunity to connect it to a little drive that's right here. I think it's important to keep in mind that we talked to a lot of property owners at the meeting the other night who have their own interests in what they'd like to do with their properties. And we had some really interesting conversations with those folks about some of them just simply want to build some units for family members. They want to build a place they can retire so they don't have to move. And I think, they can do an ADU today, that's allowed, but they can't build just a separate unit in many cases because access is limited or the square footage that's required for their lot. So we're trying to help create some of these opportunities. We know there's a lot of different needs and desires here. We're trying to find a balance.
Could I
Yeah,
go back?
sure.
Yeah. What do you think the possibilities are on the left-hand side here, which is the west side of Tyler Avenue? Yeah. What do you think the opportunities are for a one-lane, one-way alley property? I mean, without looking, you have to get granular because I noticed that some houses are built very close to the back lot line.
Mm-hmm.
So, but have you had that opportunity to sort of, would
Well,
that work?
Well, this Marta Lane.
Not there on the other side.
Oh, you're talking. Wait, I'm confused. Oh, you're talking about up here.
No, I'm talking about to the left. Up.
Right here.
Right.
Yeah, all
Right
behind there, behind all
Behind.
the way,
Okay, I see. I see.
and
what you're
where it might come out, where it might go in, and what's back there. What do you think? Because that would
Yeah.
provide the access that everybody, some people would want.
Yeah, we haven't explored it yet. I mean, we need to reach out. I think we need to bring these folks into the process. So when we did our flyering there is a really there's kind of a hard line between the properties that front Tyler right here, and the ones that front, I think it's Rosecrest, this street right here. There's basically, it's a completely different neighborhood, and so we need to reach out to those folks whose properties back up to the area that we're, potentially changing the zoning for, so they're aware of this process. But a very different character. I mean, the whole lot configuration is very regular here, and so we don't necessarily have an easy way of connecting the neighborhoods, but it would be beneficial. This is where Edelmar connects, I believe. But you have a lot of kids that walk from these areas to Tyler Heights, and this is really the only connection right here, or they have to go to Forest Drive. So this is kind of typical Annapolis, disconnected neighborhoods. I would say they were just built at different
Let's
times.
focus in on the boundary, because that other neighborhood is not part of this.
It's not. It's a different ward as well.
Okay. Let's stay within the boundaries that we're talking.
Yeah.
What are the possibilities of an alley behind the Tyler Avenue?
Well, it's something I could want to talk about with a future slide, because it kind of I think it gets into subdivision. I would say it would be a very challenging process for the city to get buy-in from all those property owners to do something like that. I mean, we have a hard enough time asking for minor easements for our trail projects that are just very marginal pieces of real estate. I think there is some opportunity here in sort of raising that idea and seeing if people are interested in it. Because I mean, I think it does the potential to really benefit a lot of these properties. But
It would increase their property value because they would have more access to it. They
Yeah.
could build more.
It would make it possible to
Yeah.
subdivide much more easily. And,
it's true.
and you could build into your zoning and design standards, if there's an alley there, what can you build that fronts onto that alley? And if it's just a narrow one lane, one way, in and out, it's not that much of an appropriation.
Yeah.
And so, but you would need 100% of the property owners to say yes. And challenging is the right word.
Yeah. So I think when we get into some of the configurations that we want to try to encourage, I think we're going to get into understanding what's the minimum lot size subdivision that, if we do an alley, where does it get located? How much space are you left with if you kind of have a property cut in half, or, what's the sweet spot there to make it work? Because I think some of these people might want to subdivide on their own, and we want to give them some guidance on what would benefit kind of a big picture scenario. But we really did try to get people's opinion about the types of housing that they'd like to see in this neighborhood. And unfortunately, I don't have the image here of, we give people sticky dots to sort of select their preferences. And, we did get a lot on single family houses, but both the larger and the smaller. This is the sort of, I don't know what to call it large, but it's the more conventional 2 to 3 story single family home. This is in the neighborhood today. And then you have the smaller 1 story single family home. We had a lot of votes for both of these, but then we had a lot of votes for this 6-unit complex, which, looks like 2 houses, and then you have some units in the back as well. But we had a lot of votes for the duplex, which also looks like a single family home. We had votes for the triplex. Not so many for this quad. This is in the neighborhood as well. But we had a range of interests here. And I think what this reinforced, you can see that we didn't put any options here that were sort of larger apartment complexes. We're trying to do kind of more granular stuff here. Promote incremental growth. We have a range of housing types here today, but they're all primarily based on that single family module. So we can work with that. We can provide a variety of size units, and we had people talk to us about how do we preserve affordability. That's a factor. It's a characteristic of the neighborhood today, and it's hard to do. Just candidly, we talked to some folks who already had kind of zeroed in on the fact that we could change our moderately priced dwelling unit requirements to kind of incentivize density, but sort of have some of those be part of the requirement. Today, our code requires one moderately priced dwelling unit for every 10 units. Perhaps in this overlay zone, it's a smaller, one for every 5 units or something like that. But this graphic from different city, it kind of shows the range of housing types that you could create with the right zoning standards, where some of this will be market affordable. I mean, you have different size units for different household types, basement apartments, ADUs, fourplexes, duplexes, single family homes, and so I think the more variety you have, there will be some market affordability, inevitably, but without some other kind of policy piece in there, like MPDUs, I think it's going to be hard to sort of guarantee that. But we could do a lot with just kind of encouraging housing variety. So it's important to acknowledge, and this is something we're going to be thinking about. Obviously, nothing happens very fast in Annapolis. We could change the zoning dramatically, and we could still see nothing change. There's a misconception, I would say. Generally, every community we work with tends to think that the city is sort of able to activate development when it wants to and can turn it off when we don't want it. And it's really not the case. I mean, we can set the standards that guide good development, or not have standards and sort of throw our chances to the wind. And, you could have individual lots. So number 2 is you could have the individual lots are redeveloped to provide new housing options for family members or new residents. So basically you have these deep lots. Somebody could, redevelop the house that's on that lot into a larger single family home and an ADU. Or you could have these lots subdivided and redeveloped. You could have the lots combined, consolidated and subdivided and redeveloped. Or you could have the lots just combined and redeveloped and not broken into smaller units. And, I think our goal is to sort of create this more granular community, incremental type development. So we're trying to come up with some standards that can really, I think, even if you have a large site, multiple lots are combined, that you still have a development that's kind of broken up into smaller units and not sort of one large mass. In fact, that was something Alderman Gay said first off. He does not want a Watergate apartment type complex here. That's not the goal of this. So, and so just lastly, it's when we're talking about changing the zoning. I mean, these are the typical variables that we're working with. We can change the subdivision requirements so that you're sort of setting in place how often you need to have a connecting street if you have a large lot that you're subdividing, and what the lot size should be, the minimum lot size, which today is pretty large in the R2 zone. It's like 5,400 square feet. Street frontage and setback conditions. Today you drive down or walk down Tyler Avenue, you see like really large setbacks, and the fences are right up to the sidewalk in some cases. How can we set the street frontage conditions differently to get a much better street condition? What kind of density should we allow? Height limits. There was a lot of requests for that to be limited, and that's understandable. Parking and access, that's probably one of the biggest challenges to these lots today. How do you, if you build on these deep lots, how do you make sure that there's access to the street without having those alleyways that we were talking about before? And then finally, site design and lot coverage. How much lot should you be able to cover? And that's really important, obviously, because we're trying to build out our tree canopy and open space opportunities. And so we don't want to encourage every square foot to be paved, and it wouldn't be possible with our stormwater regulation. But we can be more deliberate about that. So that's kind of where we're headed with this right now. I think the next time we meet, we're going to have some more specific recommendations that be good to bounce
So
off you.
maybe premature at this point, but however you end up crafting the language in the code, please make it really understandable. So you don't need a land use lawyer to go do something with your property. So that's always the trick, is to make it understandable to anybody who wants to do something, but still have it make sense.
Was the Department of Public Works traffic engineer there?
He was at the streetscape station the whole most of the time.
Does he have any preliminary ideas?
I don't know. Did he say anything specific? I think he was there mostly to listen, but
Yeah, he was there mostly to listen to what the concerns were, but also to gauge what people's willingness to give and take on whether it be allowing for street trees on their property or allowing for like those community amenities on their property, or giving up street parking for expansion of the landscaping into the right of way. I think he did a great job of explaining roundabouts and neighborhood circles for the community to understand what those look like at different scales, and what different traffic calming implements can do for reducing speed, and how effective they can be. And so, I think he has an idea of what the community might be looking for, and is definitely looking forward to future conversations and coordination with us and what we might propose.
I was really happy to see that one of the possible things that they had shown there were mini traffic, which I know in the past have been out of the vernacular of prior public works folks. And so I was happy to see that this is sort of back on the table.
A traffic circle?
Yeah,
What?
mini circle. So if you get these larger intersections, there's something in the middle of the street that you have to navigate around, as opposed to stop signs where even if you have a four-way stop, it's sort of stop-ish, and you just have the potential for really bad conflict points for vehicle crashes and things like traffic circles, especially with a tree. I don't like them that have all, they're kind of ugly with the yellow and black arrows. I think actually putting a rather large tree in the middle of the traffic circle is awesome, because it provides a little shade, and if you don't navigate the circle, you hit the tree. And it does
There
its
you
job.
go.
Well, I mean, it does its job. You slow down.
You stop. You're right.
Yeah.
Specifically talking about traffic circle. A traffic circle, perhaps a little larger than a mini, but not a maxi, at the intersection of Tyler and Hilltop.
Yeah.
Because there's a strip of, okay?
yeah, we got that idea from folks. Yeah,
Where'd you get it from?
mutual friends,
Huh?
people that you know.
If I can just say, my future son-in-law,
Uh-huh.
and they live at the intersection of Tyler and Hilltop, so they see all of these
Oh, yeah.
accidents and near accidents all the time,
Mhm.
and the speed, Tyler. he's the one who came up with the idea for traffic circle. And right next to Brian Callahan's house, across the hilltop, it looks like there's a strip of land that may be city-owned,
Mhm.
which would allow, some configuration.
Yeah, they were also sharing that there's a lot of stormwater issues right there too, that
Mhm.
ponding, and so it could be a way to address that as well. So some of this is definitely capital project type stuff that could advance. I mean, we don't need to do any, I don't want to speak for Public Works, but it seems like we've done the traffic studies already. Like that has proven itself out. We just have to elevate kind of the design of the improvements. And, as Alexis said, the crashes are frequently with parked cars because there's no like kind of formalization of the street parking. There's a occasional parked car here. It's like playing Frogger, and people aren't expecting them. So having bump outs that kind of frame the street parking could help a lot. We could still retain street parking is not a bad thing for traffic calming, but if it's sort of done haphazardly and you're not, it's not designed into the street, then it becomes a problem. So,
Well, I think that back access to these lots, whether it be whatever the name of that Marta, or on the other side in the alley, I think is going to be essential to that, to what you're thinking. Second thing that occurs to me is that one of the goals in the comp plan is neighborhood character. What people have been saying, what they said at this workshop was they want to keep that neighborhood character, but they're willing to allow, below 32 feet or whatever
Yeah.
the height limit. They're willing to engage in all sorts of combinations.
there's a
Which is
lot
great.
you can do in that range. Yeah.
Huh?
There's a lot you can do in that range. I mean, it's,
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing, third, and then I'll get on. You had a slide which showed across from Annapolis Seafood some kind of a trail to the back of
I'll go
Annapolis
back.
Middle. I think you might want to. There you go.
Yeah, this has been a long-term plan. This idea that you have businesses on Forest Drive right here. There's a couple auto shops, a liquor store, restaurant, laundromat. They all have curb cuts, and so it's pretty tough place to walk along or ride a bike on. Pretty dangerous. But there is space behind these businesses. And in fact, Anne Arundel County Public Schools owns the property right up to here. So Robinwood is actually undergoing a redevelopment right now, and their design team has been in discussion with the county public schools, and there is an interest in, at least, if not a roadway, a trail connection through here that would allow people coming from Robinwood or if this community here, to basically avoid Forest Drive, trying to get to the middle school. Yeah, so that's.
And what's the status of Annapolis Seafood and fire?
There's not an active project there right now. I mean, there's been some developer interest, but it's a challenging site, primarily because of the zoning. I would say it's B1. B2. Thanks. It only allows for residential over retail or commercial space, which actually is a reasonable thing for that location. It's just that the developer teams that have shown interest are either folks who want to do like gas station convenience or 100% residential. And we even had one developer team that was trying to do like gas station convenience and residential, which was kind of not the fit that we were looking for. Yeah. So the folks who are really good at doing all residential are trying to make it work with the commercial component, and we've seen some things but I don't know if they're going to commit. But that's really the challenge.
Why is the planning department hesitant to allow only residential? What is it that you want there?
Well, the
Commercial?
comprehensive plan was really speaking about mixed use on these major corridors. And so what we're open to, there's actually there's a vacant site close to the Annapolis Seafood Market site that's just a greenfield site today. There's a tire shop in between, unfortunately, that disconnects the Seafood Market site from this greenfield site. We're open to coupling those two properties to treat that as one plan development, and then you could do the mixed use on one portion and have the other portion be all residential. But even that is, for these developers that only do residential, it's still a challenge for them. And that greenfield site as a residential development is a bit challenging too. So just its dimensions. So
That also be one.
it is. So
That's been for sale for a long.
it
Right.
has.
Yeah.
It has. And so the plan development scenario is really beneficial because it gives them some more flexibility to do only residential or residential with some limited. The ground floor might have to have a percentage as non-residential, but it doesn't have to be all commercial. So that's the benefit to tying those together. But it's just it's a challenging site. I think the Annapolis Seafood Market site, there's actually 2 lots behind it that are part of the parcel that would be developed, so that it's a bigger site than it looks like. But
So as part of the overlay, are you thinking of adding a plan development component, or what are you dreaming of?
I think that some of the aspects of the overlay district might build on what we currently allow in the plan development guidelines, just in terms of flexibility, but it would not, the plan development scenario is really designed for larger projects. And I think what we do here should really be applicable to a single lot or a combined group of lots that might be bigger.
I'm talking about the intersection, I'm talking about the Annapolis.
Oh yeah, I mean, the plan development amendments would that's a perfect case for them. Yeah.
And what's your scenario for proposing the rezoning? When? What's your time plan?
Well, for plan development changes,
Well,
that legislation would have to be introduced by mid-June. That's the deadline, and so it's really in council's hands. But what we're working on here also has to be in some sort of legislation format by mid-June. So we have a kind of a very aggressive
so they might
timeline.
come together at the same time.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah,
All right.
possibly. You might have your hands full.
Should we start counting
Reviewing.
the days?
What'd you say?
Should we start counting the days?
You can. I think some of what you're going to see is going to be, I think, pretty exciting and beneficial for the city. That I think we've been wanting to do for a while. There's a lot of interest on the city council to sort of evolve our zoning. So
Well, it's the capital investment on the streetscape, the instigator.
Yeah.
And the access on both sides of Taylor, behind the lot, is what's going to really drive the innovation. And the allowance of however kind of overlay where you turn it into R3 or whatever you do, going to just allow it
Yeah.
and see what happens.
What's the earliest you might see a capital project show up for the streetscape? Like, not this year's budget?
26, 27.
it could.
next-
Yeah, it could.
Huh.
This is like the time where we can get something in the budget. I think there's definitely wiggle room in the budget to do a demonstration project, like Melvin Avenue.
Yeah.
You probably learned a few things from that we could benefit from, maybe what not to do, or, but that's, I think, the great thing about doing this stuff now. There's the demonstration, it's kind of tactical urbanism type projects are really viable.
Yeah.
So it's just
Well,
one on
it's
Hilltop
it's
right
good
now.
that people are used to seeing that, especially on Hilltop. So kind of aware of that kind of stuff happening. So they're not going to flip out that, oh, it's ugly or
Right.
whatever. So they're getting used to that. Yeah.
It would be really cool to do something, there's an organization called Better Block. It's a national organization. They really tried to spawn a lot of these traffic calming demonstration projects and get neighbors to sort of reclaim their street by putting out like large planters and trees in large pots as kind of like, de facto traffic calming, and putting in temporary crosswalks that people could see, just to try things. And I think doing something that's sort of really engaged with the community would be, I think, an ideal scenario here, because there's a lot of interest and people have a lot of ideas.
It builds trust too.
To do the demonstration first.
Yeah, just to get the community involved in doing something quickly and this responsive to the kind of stuff that they're talking
25 years here, and this is the best I've seen. This is you've all of the elements are really happening here. You're thinking about it. You're engaging with people. You're getting ideas from the bottom up. You're engaging Department of Public Works early. You've got alderman, council on your side.
Yeah,
Great.
I mean,
I'm impressed.
there seems to be a lot of momentum.
Good, because it's something the city is doing something for a neighborhood which hasn't gotten any.
And it was really interesting meeting the people at our event the other night and seeing the sort of range of people who've been living in this community for a long time. Some really engaged residents that I think have been very patient.
Speaking of patience, can I raise something? I moved to Annapolis in 2018. I live near Hilltop and Primrose.
Oh.
Tucson Park, the August Woods development.
Okay.
There's a house that's been under construction ever since I moved there 5 years ago with scaffolding.
They're the one.
Oh, it's
We
been
know the one.
way. It's probably
We all know.
15
all know.
years.
You all know that one?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I play tennis, so we
Yeah,
look at the
so,
back of it.
What's the problem?
I have no idea, but I always
That's
notice it.
that's so unsightly, sitting there with all that stuff.
We just look at it and we know that it's more than 30% higher than any other rooftop on the circle. We're like, how did they do that? How is it still going up after it's already beyond the, but no one will call and
I just wish they would complete the work on it.
or enforce the height that,
Oh, the height, they're in
the height's
violation of the
already,
height.
it looks
Yeah.
to the naked eye, but like everyone's seen it.
Yeah, I don't have a good explanation for why they haven't advanced that project or what the city could do to sort of help them advance it.
But
Prod
they
them,
had, I would imagine they have to get a permit to do what they're doing, right?
yeah.
Has that permit expired?
Yeah, I mean that would be the first thing to look at. But I'll note to ask.
I mean,
my,
5 years. And I'm sure it was there much longer
think
before
it's
I
long.
moved.
I think it's been longer. I mean, I moved back to the area 4.5 years ago, and it was definitely So
I just wondered. Okay.
But the nice thing is now they have a bus that's painted gray, so it matches the house, and they move that into the yard so that it's not as ugly.
All right.
I want to go, but in terms of access to Truxton Park, there's that little street. Who does the basement water? What's the guy who was the motorcycle?
Pastrana.
Pastrana. There's that little street.
right here. That's-
Yes.
They haven't done anything there either.
What does that street back up to or could provide any walkable access to the?
Yeah, it could. There actually historically there was a trail at the end of it that went to Hawkins Cove, kind of, and ultimately connected Truxton Park. It's pretty overgrown today, but yeah, that was the whole former train line. Hard to believe, but yeah, the train came through here, eventually going to Bay Ridge. And so this arc here, to our knowledge, is owned by the city, which is rare. A lot of these railroads have been given up over time and reclaimed by other property owners. But our understanding is that this portion is all city owned. This is called Elliott Road, and it's privately owned today. So it would have to be a negotiation there to sort of, as you all know, there was a development on that Pastrana land at one point that ultimately got abandoned, but they had permitted and they were going to put a trail along that road.
And what happened to it? What's the status?
They just gave up. They just didn't. They
They
decided
took
not.
down all the trees first, though.
No, they haven't. They
I'm
haven't
not-
touched anything.
Are you
don't
sure?
think-
Because that's where all the bamboo is. And then I was like, how is the bamboo still standing, but the trees are gone?
Where?
Off of Elliott.
Hmm.
Anyway. we
Yeah,
can't
I
look at it.
don't think they did any clearing at all, but it's a little bit of a mystery. I mean,
That
they
was the
just-
most contentious hearing I think I've ever seen or been a part of
Mhm.
on the commission,
I wasn't
uh,
here yet, but yeah, I
because
understand.
we proposed a condition. I proposed a condition of allowing a connection to that, a foot connection to that path from Colony Drive. Whew.
I didn't like that.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
No.
that
not
was
here for
an
that.
interesting hearing.
Yeah.
Mr. Waldman handled that very deftly. I thought.
But maybe we should look at that now, because if we can get that connection back, that would be terrific.
Yeah, I mean, it helps to have it in a plan, so you can kind of advance it as development happens. But
Right. But you can forfeit rights too after a while if
well, the way that it's a series of single family home lots, and each home has a section of that private roadway. So it's like a very challenging situation, I would say, to create, unless they were all consolidated as one new development, which is what was happening previously.
right.
But my understanding is that the family that owned that land decided just to kind of maintain those subdivided lots. And
And what was the name of that? I can't remember the name.
Central Park. I think
Central
is what it-
Park. Yep.
called.
That was a lot of work. And they just stopped and said, we're done?
yeah, it's somewhat surprising. I
They
mean, it
still
does
have the
happen,
paper.
but
Huh?
projects
still have
fall
the
through all the
paper.
time.
I think I do
I
too.
based-
I was
based
going
it.
through. Yeah. Well, the least we can do is make them maintain and keep the bamboo from crazy. It is growing.
Yeah. Sure, I know what you're
But
talking about.
that continuation of access, I'm not sure what's off the slide. Yeah, what's past that.
Yeah, it just kind of dead ends at this conservation area. That's
Uh-huh.
the Vitar easement.
Yeah.
Familiar with, kind of a
So-
large
So
triangular.
a walkable path or little bikeable path would
Would be
go through
great.
the conservation easement, but it's the street Elliott Lane itself, the problem. Okay, let's keep that in mind.
For sure.
Long term.
Yeah.
But that makes sense with this whole Tyler Avenue thing.
Yeah.
Be able to cross there, a safe crossing,
Yeah. In
walk down a
fact,
small lane, turn
um,
onto a walkable path and get to the back of Truxton Park.
it would be great.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a big point of the comprehensive plan. It's talking about those types of greenway connections. I mean, this one right here on the other end at Bay Ridge Avenue, this is the SPCA site, which has a remarkable trail network today that is not really public, but I've walked it, and it's used by the dog walkers who volunteer at the SPCA, and it's not, to my knowledge, it's not like a protected area, but it's not really developable either. It's very, it's a critical area. It's kind of awkward topography. There's some wetlands in there, but yeah, I mean, if there was some sort of formalized agreement with SPCA that kind of put that on the map, it would be a great extension of that trail.
Where does it go to?
It just basically goes to Back Creek. There's a nice sitting area near the water, and it actually could connect over to Georgetown East Elementary, which is right here.
So who owns all that property? It's not in a conservation easement right now.
SPCA.
And there was a huge stormwater project that was proposed by Back Creek Conservancy before they merged with Spot Creek Conservancy.
Mhm.
I know the city actually, this is way when they had DNEP, but it may come back up again because
Mhm.
there's a big move afoot under the whole Watershed Act to do that area because there's a drainage area that I don't know 64,000. I mean,
Right. There are some stormwater detention ponds, I think, back here associated with this community. I think it's Timber Creek.
But yeah, Green Desk looked at that, and I think it might come up again. So maybe we can get it.
Woo! That's not actually walkable off the street.
Yeah.
All right.
But
Comments?
to talk about.
Comments?
No, thank you. It was a great job
great.
as usual.
Yeah, very good.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Let's keep it going.
All right.
Whatever
Thank you.
we can do.
Appreciate it.
Alleys.
There's a good history of those here, that's for sure.
Alleys are great. I grew up with alleys.
Bunch
Hyde
of
Park.
them.
Wilmette.
Well, no, I think well, we're going to continue meeting with you. Yeah, certainly, if you know people in that neighborhood, let them know, remind them. But we'll invite you to our next community meeting. Did not get the notice out. We were remiss in doing that. So you could attend the next community meeting that we have if you like. But
It'll probably be the second week of May.
yeah,
It's going to be what?
It'll probably be the second week of May.
All right. All right. You're right. I mean,
yeah.
whatever we can do to sort of, support.
Okay.
Wow.
I have a question. They're, all great, but we talk, but I just wonder if things are in place line process. They decide they build, they want to. Is anything being done? That it's all great. It takes years to get done.
Is your mic on?
Oh. If it takes years to get done, I think it's going to frustrate people. So is anything in place to streamline the process?
No, I mean, that's a great comment. I think that's something that we could work into these zonings. I mean, as an overlay district, we could add some priority to how these types of projects are reviewed. I mean, we definitely don't want to wait another decade to see something happen.
'Cause when I do talk to people,
yeah.
builders, whoever, they're like, we've been told to not go to an app,
Uh,
not to stay outside the city.
Yeah.
And, if that's kind of the take on it, it's going to be, difficult. So I just wonder if there's a possibility of kind of making a change.
Yeah, there is. I mean, as we
Have you
walked
guys-
around the neighborhood, I think one of our observations was that some of these lots are very challenging to redevelop because of the access limitations, and we could dramatically change the zoning tomorrow, and they still may not be able to easily do anything. We have to find some way of incentivizing or sort of,
Because it's
perhaps
all great.
bringing some.
It's all great, but like you said, if
Yeah.
it takes 10 years,
Access is the problem.
Yeah.
Access is the problem.
Yeah. So I mean, this
In the
idea of
back the lot.
expediting review could help, but also if the city did bring some capital to, be able to input the alleyway idea or something, I mean, that for some of these property owners, that could be a deal maker for them. It's the city did that, on Inner West Street. That was a big deal. It took a long time. It was basically betting on West Street, saying, hey, we put this infrastructure in, it's going to catalyze all this commercial and residential real estate and be, this different context for sure. It's, a block from the State House and Governor's Mansion. But this area, I mean, is sort of like, I would say also very important place to do this work. So
R2 is also really restrictive. So if we allow some of these other uses, a lot more things are allowable by right. So that in itself would speed up the process, especially with at the state level, them encouraging a lot more redevelopments by right. So it not saying that like that's what the lane we're going down, but that it's kind of state, local, like it kind of a perfect middle ground at the moment where depending on what is allowed by right, things could go a lot more quick.
That's a great point. I mean, a lot of things are only allowed by special exception in our zoning code today, which adds another level of review. In some cases warranted, but we could find some balance.
So if
in
the
this
zoning
area.
gets more streamlined, everything becomes a little more streamlined.
Yeah, once the standards get sort of fleshed out, and I don't know if have you guys in other places talked about pre-approved designs? So once sort of like the plan is fleshed out, it makes sense
Yeah, that
to
makes
have
sense.
certain kinds of pre-approved designs that if you wanted to select something like that, then you just walk in, get a permit, say, yep, that's on the list, go build it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
people
really
are
good.
already, they're not pre-approved, but people are just buying plans for ADUs that are already, the construction document set has already been proven to work in other places. And I would say that helps a lot too, but
Good. All right.
Cool. All right. Thanks.
Anything else from anybody? Then do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So move.
And anybody alive to second it?
Second.
Any discussion on that motion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 8:30.
Okay.